I have seen holy terror myself. It was a pit of squalor and misery, turned up to 11 and left there to stew for 10,000 years. The total population of the Sol system was probably 20 quadrillion people, give or take 10%. With numbers as large as those, counting everyone was kind of futile. So when my Crusade fleet reached Forge World Lucius in the Segmentum Obscurus, I wasn't really surprised finding Terran immigrants hauled on universe-class conveyors in the billions. Probably a billion colonists sent to every world in the Imperium, and maybe more if they were intended to colonize new worlds. The scale of this new exodus was quite on par with the capability of the Imperium. And long overdue, as Terra could use the population reduction, most of which was wasted in underhives, gang warfare or industrial-grade starvation and macro-cannibalism via corpse starch and necro-gruel. Off-world imports of food never reached the poor masses living under the ground level. The fabricator general of Forge Lucius was a bit annoyed at the extra work imposed by the Imperium to absorb and settle new colonists on existing or new planets, but he seemed capable of achieving the task without much help. Sure, a few percents of the immigrants might die in transit, and more while adapting to their new worlds and roles, but when compared to the Holy Order of the Omnissiah, sacrifice was a noble goal in itself. We spent an entire month at Forge Lucius, partly upgrading the Forge world with new asteroids, ice comets and space hulk fragments to mine, while the more important part was repairing the ancient STC's library and the Titanic 3D constructors. I had almost 2,000 new STC templates to trade, plus 2 ability to create artifacts with my willpower alone. Even rare artifacts, considered unique relics in the Imperium. In this aspect, my workload was more about finding out which items would be valuable to the Mechonicus, and how many I should produce before their value decreased too much. Obviously, brand new cogitator cores and personal shields were ranked at the top, followed by weapons and armor. Stasis fields and cells I obtained from Forge Belekane were next due to their sheer utility, as were Macarius pattern ship engines, which took an absurdly long time to construct otherwise, even for a Tier 1 Forge world like Lucius. Some old and damaged automata from Lucius were brought out to receive my blessing, gaining upgraded armor, cogitators and weapons, and then were sprinkled with holy oils and sent back into their stasis cells. But this was only a taste of what we achieved here. Remember my million Thalax Lorica cyborgs that I received from Forge Graia? At Lucius, I gained another million Thalax suits, in exchange for helping Forge Lucius receive 1 million of their own, plus the manufacturing ability to create more suits and repair damaged ones. The Lucius Lorica Legion were armed primarily with heavy arc rifles, plus some specialist squads sporting transuranium arquebuses and lightning locks. Instead, my own Lucius pattern Thalax suits were armed with iron beamers and lascannons, with a few percent sporting heavy flamers and chainswords instead, to aid with melee range fighting. For their power armor, we used an auramite-based exoskeleton plated with Necron-grade blackstone, thus giving the Lorica suits similar defense abilities to the Adeptus Custodes. Not their skill and genetic resilience, but not too bad either, if I say so myself. And I do. The fabricator of Lucius was kind enough to gift me the templates for the torsion_cannon and the neutron_laser, which I installed as secondary weapons on our Titans and replaced some of the damaged Knight and Baneblade primary weapons. Only a few squads of my Space Marines received torsion cannons for now, until field tests could prove their worth in real combat. This encounter was proven exciting/glorious, Rogue Trader. The gift of Omnissiah flows through you. The fabricator began to speak, when both of us received a manifold warning about incoming graviton waves and a possible Tyrannid incursion. Must be my luck. The Emperor has granted us fortune, fabricator. I was just considering where to test my new troops in combat, I said with a cheeky voice. The fabricator turned his head towards me, his only human eye frowning. Your aid is quite welcome, Lord Lancefire. I could not safeguard all the Terran menials in only 3 months until the flesh beasts arrive. There isn't any place to put them, or enough lift capacity to send them elsewhere. I raised a finger up, and stored 80 billion immigrants and their universe conveyors as well. I could use 84 giant bulk haulers myself. Plus my own dominion in the eastern fringe could use more colonists. The Emperor was quite generous. Minefields and new starforts next? The fabricator asked in a calm voice, and after that, we should power up the planetary Geller field. The shadow in the warp would create too much disruption to the factory schedule otherwise. I added with a tiny shrug. We nodded at each other in synchronicity, then we both teleported to our jobs to begin preparing. I mean, I went to take a shower and then impregnate a dozen women with my blessed seed, but otherwise it was almost the same. Admiral Margos was then extracted from the Tesseract to help with fleet preparations, while General Spartan took over the Lorica Legion and our future ground defenses. How long do I have to stay dead? A huge Primarch muttered as he oversaw the preparations from his hololith screens. You could help, by acting like your Anzian, Vulcan. But only from inside the Tesseract. I answered with a grimace. Truly, the poor Primarch was kinda wasted in this prison, despite numerous advances in STC development. He would need much more time to recreate the ancient tech to make new STCs, since the Men of Gold has reached technological singularity before they could create these wonders. A single man, no matter how brilliant, could not remake the entire technological steps of a galactic-size federation ruled by godlike AIs. Still, I was hoping it would only take a long time, and provide that time via temporal dilation. Maybe the Speranza and the Blade could also help, when we returned home. Or maybe the Votans had some clues. Anyways. Tyranid invasion. My bane and purpose in this universe. Start by cruiser skirmish and Nova shells to thin out the Hive fleet, then use Nova mines when they entered the Lucius star system. Afterwards, thin them out more with my forts and battleships, and lastly crush them on the ground. Luckily, Forge World Lucius was a dead planet, so the Tyranids would starve. The forges and manufactoriums were hidden deep inside the hollow planet, since Lucius had an empty interior lit up by an artificial sun. Some kind of wacky planetary engineering by the Federation in its days of glory. Not the only hollow planet in the galaxy, but they were quite rare. By the time the Leviathan Hive fleet arrived with its hungry maws, the sun had decreased in mass by a full trillionth, mostly due to exaggerated use of my divine breath to speed up minefield preparations, plus new forts, bunkers and new weapons. The new reality cage turned on, deep under the surface of Lucius, and pressed against the shadow in the warp. Nova shells and mines exploded like fireworks among the million bioships, while lances and macro cannons fired non-stop at the closest Tyranid invaders. My Singularity battleship fired a single beam on concentrated gravity directly at the largest Hive ship, crushing it alongside thousands other bioships. And yet, distant spores launched from the Hive fleet towards the Forge world and its bases on the nearest moons and asteroids, filled with feeding elements of the Tyranid species. My Crusade fleet drew back behind the fort lines, and the Lucius Basilicone ships joined us. Things weren't looking too good. You may go, Lady Rosalia. The Empress spoke in a mild voice, making the Lord Inquisitor bow and then run out of the room in a flash. Janice Lancefire sighed, and threw him a glare. What purpose does it serve using your glamour on my dear mother? Shoot the messenger too, next time. She asked in a colder voice, holding her palm on his original teak desk crafted from the scavenged remains of a long-lost dreadnought from the First Planetary Wars. I am not upset about that new iron core, my love. Instead, I am quite sure they will become a force to scare our enemies off, much like the Death Corps do today. The Emperor said while glancing away with a guilty face. It was not your own idea, was it? The Sisters of Battle were not one either. So you merely accepted us, at your side. Janice mused with a hurt voice. The two psychic giants stared at each other for a second. Stop trying to guilt me, woman. I have suffered enough, on that stupid side chair. And speaking of it, I heard a few hints about Omnicopeia. If we can recover it, then the chair could be repaired, maybe even upgraded. The Emperor of Mankind revealed with a meaningful voice. Janice pinched her fingers, and traced the future for a minute. An STC for psionic tech, right inside the maelstrom? We could take my fortress and smash our way through. Just the two of us, and maybe a few of your companions. We can do it. The Emperor sighed deeply. I see you ignored other candidates, like my Primarchs. Or the Grey Knights. They would likely fail, and miserably too. That bird would play them like toys, and spit out their bones. So, it's either my way or, Janice said with a careless shrug. I'm sorry, dear Janice. I cannot leave Terra yet, not without losing the planet, and then the rest of the Imperium. So it will need to be your father. He managed to deal with Ixnilo quite easily too. The Emperor whispered while holding Janice in his arms. One day soon, we will have to leave this planet. You know that. Janice answered with a sad voice. I am already evacuating the non-critical population. But moving so many people to new worlds takes time. Even if 1,000 Forge worlds can take 1 trillion people each, that only make a single quadrillion. About 5% of the total number. I hope to save at least a third. The Emperor offered with a grieving voice. You would make a decent lamenter, with that bleeding heart. Anyways, even my father is not certain to succeed. His crusade fleet only has 2 damn forts. Janice quipped in a lighter voice, then went to pour herself some priceless handmade wine. Or was it feet-pressed wine? Expensive and tasted great, that's what all she cared about right now. But they better had washed those feet, or else. The Emperor's armor shifted subtly, gaining the Lamenter red heart icon on the shoulder, while a dragon's mouth appeared on his chest. The Salamanders and the Lamenters were the only space marines which came out right. Defenders of humanity, and not bloody butchers and heartless oppressors. You shouldn't worry about Pef Lancefire, my dear. His first seal has already broken. A higher danger will only make him even stronger, maybe even break the second seal. And Canis will be there to eat what's left of his enemies' souls. The Emperor noted in a slightly amused voice. Canis better not get hurt. I'll break your damned desk, and make you a collar from your Lisa painting. Janice growled in warning while eyeing the precious relic on the wall. Mona Lisa smiled enigmatically back at her. Dash. What's wrong with my damn prediction engine? I growled out loud, as the T-engine failed to predict another flanking move from the Hive fleet. Canis raised his wise eyes at me, then glanced at the other wolf. The hive mind is ever adapting, Lord Captain. While not as strong as the old ones, its psychic power is still growing. Planets are being devoured every day, somewhere in the galaxy. Zath explained in a callous tone. The hive fleet has been reduced to half already. The largest hive ships are blown apart. And yet the shadow in the warp still counters my tempor mortis. I am getting aggravated. I grunted back, focusing my mind on the Tesseract. Displace more bio-titans into the sun, spread out more nova mines, move my ships out from encirclements and ambushes. It was getting hard, at least in the space battle. On the ground and the orbitals, my Primaris Astartes, the Tech Marines and the Lorica cyborgs were having a field day, while our Titans could still pierce and kill hive tyrants and carnifexes with every shot. The Auxilia didn't fare quite as well, but then they weren't meant to defeat the bugs by themselves. Only hold them in place, until larger guns were available to finish the job. And we did have a few very big guns. The Eternal Lament Fortress opened fire with the purple Immaterium beam, scouring entire squadrons of bioships of life and soul every second. A bit later, the Black Lament opened fire as well, removing the flanking tendril from existence. Much better. I scanned the ground for a second, recovering wounded soldiers and sending them to medical to be patched up, flesh borers removed and bioplasma burns covered up. Anyone else beside me would have needed to abandon the orbit and retreat underground, then fight an attrition war with the landed Tyrannid bioforms. Maybe we would still need to do that, if my prediction powers failed too much. And then, while pushing hard against the torrent of bioships and Tyrannid bugs assaulting Forge Lucius, time began to slow down. Almost like I was caught in a stasis field, But I wasn't the victim. I was the one creating the effect. Even Zath struggled to lift his metallic head, 1,000 times slower than he should. Another hermetic seal? And this time is a chronoleptic one. I'd guess your small T engine works properly again? The Catan wolf asked me with a printed message on the manifold circuit. I glanced at my right arm, where the 9 dots of the T engine lit up in clear green diodes. At my will, the stasis field sped up and slowed down with ease, making 2 dots shift towards red and blue. When you say chronoleptic, do you mean a Doppler effect? Light moves away faster than light speed itself? I guessed with my pretty decent brain. Galaxies shifted towards red the faster they moved away, right? Not light shift, no. Even regular humans can already distort light in many ways. This is about spatial expansion from the birth of the universe. The tesseract anchor just decelerates this time/volume below the normal expansion speed. Also, not something a human should survive doing. Zath said in a rather impressed voice. I had no idea what he said, but it sounded rather cool and important. But if it worked like he said, I could turn back time, right? Don't try to turn back time, human. Where will you discharge the energy of this star? A single year of stellar emission can feed a Catan rather well. Zath warned me just as I began turning the star back on its axis. Luckily, I did have my breath of the gods to use an hour of stellar output for something. Like say, fire. Hot, plasma hot fire. Directly inside the Tyrannid ships converging on my fleet. We returned exactly to the moment when my T-engine began to malfunction. And the Tyrannid ships were all burning like fat candles. Well, I guess I found out why my temporal vambrace didn't work right. Some idiot was playing with timelines without any idea what might happen. Chronoleptic powers are quite nice, right, Zath? I asked the surprised Catan. The Catan nodded cautiously, and measured my right arm with worried eyes. Congratulations on achieving cosmic fire, Lord Captain. I nodded back. It will take some time getting used to my new cosmic powers. Right then, Darcy ran onto the bridge, glowing with a special golden glow of an Imperial saint. Captain, we have a new mission. Rogue trader, you are such an aggravating problem. I thought my emotions were muted 4,000 years ago. The fabricator of Lucius blared at me with his oversized megaphone. Don't get mad, fabricator. I love Baneblades like any other man. I even have 2,000 of them in my army. But the Stormblade doesn't have a turret, and the heavy bolter secondary weapons need ammo, which I don't have. I explained in a patient voice. Wordlessly, the fabricator loaded new pics on his holoscreen, showing my auxiliary tanks in combat with the Tyrannids. Doomhammers and Ironbanes blew up thousands of small bioforms with each shot, or felled down a larger bio-titan in 2 or 3 shots. Pretty decent, I thought. A Stormblade's plasma blast gun would have killed that Hive Tyrant in 1 shot. It's not efficient. The rogue tech priest complained in a sad voice. Mount a single plasma gun on a rotating turret instead of a fixed casemate, then give it another pair of las cannons and a multi-melter on the glacis. Also, it needs an iron shield at least, I said with a careless voice, while mentally assembling exactly such a model on my implant and then uploading it on his holoscreen. My forge will produce 2,000 of these Flamebanes for your dynasty, rogue trader. Also, 100 Nova cruisers and 4 new Godbane Lance battleships. But are you sure you want 2 million armed sentinels? They are rather fragile machines. The fabricator offered with a dubious voice. Humans are far more fragile, fabricator. Sentinels are not power armor or Lorica suits, but any regular human walking inside a sentinel is a dozen times more combat effective than a lasgun infantryman. Not suitable for the Imperial Guard, but my auxiliary units are not bound by the Lords of Terror's decree. And neither would be your own auxiliary regiments. I proposed with a sneaky voice. The fabricator's mech dendrites clasped each other, as if he was wringing his hands. The machines would be easy to repair and re-sanctify post-combat, after the flesh bits have been washed off. Perhaps a bit wasteful on pilots, but then Terra itself is exporting willing new pilots by the billions. Cleaning up the underhives, most likely. He deduced after a minute of contemplation. It was a bit strange to see a large machine giant acting so human. But he was still human, after all. Indeed. Think of billions of steelwalkers, marching in step to overwhelm orcs and other species with sheer firepower. They won't be god walkers, but at some point numbers have their own quality, I whispered with a teasing voice. Force multipliers. You are well versed in the Toptica doctrines, rogue trader. But then, you are also an estate's chapter master, so you have to be. I will consider your walker regiment, Pef Lancefire. Not with this kind of complicated cable arms and energy weapons like the Lamenta Auxilia Sentinels, but hydraulic arms and autocannons would suffice for my forge, while our Lucian alloy will still provide immunity from small arms fire. The fabricator decided while examining pics of my sentinels in combat with more tyrannid bioforms. I nodded slowly. Ease of manufacture would be important when making billions of war engines. I did tend to go a bit overboard with quality equipment for my troops, but they weren't strictly necessary. Well then. Please deliver the stuff to Forge Machine when is ready, as I do have to head towards the Maelstrom now. Orders from Terra. I asked in a polite voice, then set down my teacup and patted Canis on his head. May the light of the Omnissiah guide your way, Pef Lancefire. The fabricator answered with a small nod, and then I vanished into my tesseract and emerged in my rooms. Woo! Roof! Canis advised me as another wolf materialized in my room. Zath measured me with his almost lifelike eyes, and nodded. Do you need more weapons, Lord Captain? I can create more phase blades or etheric detectors. The katana offered without prompt. Divine gifts? There would be hell to pay, future Pef. You know yourself best, Zath. If your energy is full, you can produce more detectors and do a sweep of the fleet for genostealers or other infiltrators. Our destination is the hell_s_teeth demon world in the Maelstrom, so my troops could use extra detection abilities. I advised the Catan wolf with a gentle voice. I will not accompany you inside the Maelstrom, nor the Galactic Core, Pef Lancefire. I can sense my own demise in that place. The Catan said in a strange tone, almost sad. Ah, now the gifts made more sense. Stick to orcs and tyrannids for your meals, Zath. I rather not have to hunt you down, and ruin our friendship. I spoke out loud, making Canis perk up and walk towards the Catan. The two wolves growled something inaudible at each other. Saying goodbye, perhaps, your gift awaits in the 9th storage bay where you had the Blackstone, Lord Captain. When you finish your ascension, we will meet again. The Catan spoke in my mind, stronger than other times. His shape shifted to a humanoid giant of stone and gold, and then vanished. I sat on my adamantium chair while Canis nosed my face with his wet nose. Yeah, the Catan got spooked and left, which didn't bode well for my chances. The Emperor might have sent me to my death this time. Worf. My wolf encouraged me, then bit my glove and tugged on it. Right. I did have my own powers now. Anyways, my regular auxilia would be of no use inside the damned Maelstrom, nor would any regular crew of Voidborns and Tech Priests, so only blanks could join. As it happened, I did have 84 misplaced universe-class mass conveyors filled with Terran immigrants, and thus a way to send the non-essential people back to the fringe, without reducing the fleet's firepower. While making my way towards the Maelstrom, we stopped at 84 orc or feral worlds to seed small new colonies and exterminate the dangerous flora or fauna, and at each stop I would reformat one universe conveyor into a fleet carrier with warpless engines and troop capacity. Only 100 million colonists and 1 million auxilia for each new colony, but with tech priests and a base of infrastructure and a sentinel guard, the colonies should grow and become feudal worlds in time. Maybe even more, who knows? I could only spare a single corvette to act as governor seat for the captain and their crew, while the immigrants spread all over the planet to make a living. I kinda understood what the Emperor wanted, dispersing the population of Terra to new worlds. For one, they would be able to live under the clear sky instead of living in dark tunnels and poisoned fumes of the underhives. On the other hand, Terra was kinda doomed anyways. A hive world with 500 billion people would struggle under a long siege, but algae farms and recycled proteins would allow it to survive, somewhat. Make that problem 40,000 times larger, and things would go bad fast. A single month of food imports disruption would condemn quadrillions to famine or cannibalism. Make that a year, and Terra would be a cemetery world. If I could see it, surely the Emperor could see it too. Plus, 1 million new colonies would possibly push the Imperium of Man into a new age of galactic domination and security. Even if the entire Imperium of today fell, the new worlds would rise into a new Imperium in time. Bad things will come, I was now certain. This was 40k after all, and good things never lasted. For in the dark future I lived in, there was only war. Keep your secrets to yourself. I muttered in a low voice, then pressed my hand on the big red button of my fortress. I had my own secrets to keep, and an overgrown mutated bird screaming in my head wasn't helping. Canis howled with his familiar golden voice, shielding the entire Crusade fleet while our Immaterium beams ripped apart the Zench Great Demon. The Keeper of Secrets went silent, probably too busy being torn up. The Eternal Lament's beam glowed purple when fired by Sister Decima, not black like my own, but when they intersected the volume occupied by the demon, they acted like my new torsion cannons, twisting and ripping demonic warp pseudomatter and its cursed soul into screaming bits. Was it the different frequencies for our Immaterium beams? No one knew, and there was nobody around to ask. But my scheme worked, so maybe I was a bit smarter now. Canis and Purity gulped in unison, devouring invisible soul fragments while Sister Stern flared her demonifuge aura to incinerate billions of lesser demons with anathemic fire. For anyone else, it would be a tough job being outside the armored hull and Gela rampart protections, but the demonifuge was flying around without a care, and looked resplendent doing so, covered in a glowing burning aura and carried by huge wings made of lightning and pure faith. In my tesseract, Librarian Menelaus discarded his melted left arm, luckily the same bionic arm he obtained after testing an orc boss in melee. In his other hand, he held our prize, the STC with all the psi-tech ever discovered by the Terran Federation before their fall. Vulcan grabbed the STC cube with careful fingers, and set it down on his work desk for analysis, while Anzion took charge of Menelaus to replace the melted arm. Turns out, sticking your bionic arm into a demonic warp trap wasn't that safe, since only the real flesh arm was considered blank. Live and learn. Beside the new STC cube, we had the damaged cube I got from Klebo, as we were hoping a comparative analysis would reveal some more secrets from our Dark Age ancestors. We were kinda lucky with our emergence into the Maelstrom, as a gigantic Mechonicus invasion kept the demons occupied on a wide front, possibly searching for the same STC. We simply struck at speed at the back of the demon lines, and absconded with the prize before the demons could reposition. Now it was only a matter of getting out alive from the damned warp rift, and hopefully without losing all my ships to warp spells and more greater demons. Librarian Valerian began his own Texorcist rituals to purify the STC cube from the Chaos Touch and potential data demons, and his Nostari ancient staff glowed with blue magic. I only kept a vague eye on the Tesseract, as the gigantic battle took most of my attention. Nova mines and lance batteries had a minimal effect in this place, much like the last time inside the Garden of Nurgle. Damage was often ignored, or sometimes shattered Chaos Marines and corrupted Titans just changed from dead to alive again, but even more mutated. I toned down the urge to climb into my Psi Titan and kick ass in person. Yes, I would do a lot of real damage, but I would lose sight of the real battle. Getting out was more important. Again, I slammed my hand on the red button, and swept the Immaterium beam over thousands of Rubrique Marines and various demon engines. They popped like confetti into strands of blue tendrils and metal shards, and didn't reform again. To my right, my Inquisitor wife leaned over the command console and tapped a few keys, and an Ares torpedo launched at near light speed, then detonated into a reality bomb, making the demon world flicker and return for a second to an Eldar world filled with decayed silver spires. My Crusade fleet rode the reality bomb's shockwave like a cork popping out from champagne, leaving Sister Stern far behind like a beacon of light into a dark sea full of monsters. She can resurrect, right? Lady Valane observed with a calm voice, just as Purity fell on her knees and began crying, while hugging Canis for dear life. I frowned but didn't answer. We might have escaped the maelstrom, but we ended up right inside the galactic core. Billions of stars and glowing nebulas lit the place like daylight, while to our left side, two alien species fought a large space battle with thousands of ships and many more void fighters. It was a bit interesting to observe these unknown Xenos and their weapons in action, but sadly it didn't last. Forgetting their squabble, the two fleets turned towards my fleet and sped up, somehow managing a pincer movement by simply avoiding each other. I think these guys see us as prey. I mused out loud, while searching the Craig database for any hints of these potential new trade partners. Well, neither the Septeryx nor the Chrobdopterophagites were considered viable partners by the Craig-owned database, which made me change my mind. Sometimes, violence is the only answer. Open fire. Both Xenos fleets, I commanded while leaning in my command throne to rest a little. One thing was certain, neither of these Xenos had any idea about Nova cannons and not bunching up. Our Alpha strike of Nova shells caught them by surprise, and made them lose half of their void fighters, while the next Nova salvo hit deeper in the middle of their fleet and blew up a few thousand escorts. Suddenly, the odds became far more even, as we matched their capital ships in numbers now. And soon after, our carriers launched our own screen of fighters and corvettes, closing the parity gap even more. And then, both the Septeryx and the Ferophagites turned tail and fled in separate directions, much faster than our heavy ships could pursue. I blessed each fleet with 100 Nova mines before they left my Tesseract's range, obliterating the rest of their void fighters, while capturing a larger ship from each species in my inventory for future dissection and comparative analysis. Since I traveled with an Ordo Xenos Inquisitor, I had to keep her happy somehow. You could have told me what you intended, Lady Valane. I spoke in a gentle voice. Sister Stern would probably return from the afterlife like she always did, but with a bit of warning, I could have prevented a lot of pain. Strong as she was, Stern was not yet invincible. The Inquisitor just glared at me. There wasn't enough time. I sighed inward and left the matter drop. We weren't out of the frying pan yet, and we haven't even met the real Votan. Captain Lancefire, we have arrived in the galactic core. Permission to instantiate fully inside the Singularity's main cogitator core? The Blade AI asked in her disturbing female voice. Yes. Another Speranza-type AI in the making. Even equipped with black hole weaponry as well. Would have been quite a menacing prospect even a year ago. Today, with both my arms sporting dimensional and temporal devices and the Catan hermetic cores active in my armpits, a mere hyper-advanced AI was not a real danger anymore. Allowed, for the Singularity. And only there. Don't make me scrub you off the rest of the fleet, we would both be disgusted by the results. I sent with a mild threat in my tone. And locks released. I understand perfectly, Lord Captain. I have learned all about the Imperium's stance on thinking machines. The Blade answered in a wider spectrum, as her abilities developed by orders of magnitude, simply from subsuming the Federation-grade data core I have created for the Gloriana-class battleship. Lord Captain, I have a lead. The Blade whispered on my brain implant, waking me up. I checked the ship time with the corner of my eye, and realized I have slept for almost 7 hours. Damn, I must have been quite tired. I normally got by with 2 or 3 hours of sleep, unless I overused my powers. On screen I demanded while drawing up in my bed. The AI turned on the hololith screen and a holographic map of the galactic core appeared, in quite a detailed resolution. Far better than anything I saw, even on top-tier Forge worlds. Maybe having a pet AI would be useful after all. The Votan Tethys_Expanse League is providing network access for a fee to all who can pay. I promised a megaton of Blackstone in exchange for 100 years of limited bandwidth. So now, we have a way in, but I'm not sure what to say. The blade said in a hesitant voice. Ah, you mean about who we are, or about what we can trade? I asked while taking out a flask of warm tea from my tesseract. I was probably abusing the valuable dimensional tech with my expedient usage, but tea was a basic human right. My provisional legend states that we are a new league, formed after our Fane became a Votan by accident. The Lancefire League. It won't hold to any proper scrutiny. The blade disclosed while changing the screen to show our hold crest and various other Votanic sigils. It's true enough. Well, we can trade gravity and Volkite tech, as well as brand new planetary cores. Don't mention barrier tech unless it becomes critical for some reason. I answered after thinking for a minute. It might work. The recent Cronus_hegemony emerged exactly from a Fane's ascension. But our ships and people are not proper kindred. Anyone with eyes will see that. Should I deploy masking holograms? The Blade AI countered with a worried voice. Nah, that would make everything obvious. We simply hold other roles in the galaxy, beside being a Votan League. For example, I am an Imperial rogue trader called Pef Lancefire. Quite famous among some groups. I offered with a grin, and took a long gulp from my tea. The flask ended too soon, and I realized I was very hungry. That's absurd. And ridiculous. Nobody will believe this. The AI commented in disbelief. Just make sure to mention Federation-grade planetary cores. And some technical data about RAM and ROM and whatever. I answered in a hurry, then simply skipped through the tesseract to the officers' mess hall, still in my green pajamas and silk sleepers. Lord Captain, sir? The cook asked in surprise. Breakfast for two. But just for me, I demanded in a hurry, then sat down at the nearest table. 3 of my daughters were having dinner, having just came out of their night shift on the bridge. Father, you could have your bodyguard bring you food. Layla observed like a smartass. I nodded, still a bit tired. Bridge instruments running well? I asked instead. Blademaster Jotun would test each type of food, and I would starve until he finished. There have been a few weird things, then everything began running perfectly. We expected quite a different problem after leaving the maelstrom. My daughter answered as the cook set my plate and fork in front of me. Eggs and bacon and other things. I also didn't care right now. I almost inhaled my food, and sensed my omega nanites dissolve and disperse the proteins with great efficacy. In 10 minutes, I began feeling better. Well, we have just become a new League of Votan, after our Fane cogitator ascended. This should be helpful as we trade in the galactic core. Most humans here are part of the Leagues too. I explained with a casual voice, but since every officer present absorbed my words like gospel, the news would spread fast. Protective mimicry? That's rather smart, father. The second daughter commented with a curious voice. I smiled a bit. Aruna was a smart girl, but not yet wise. The Lancefire League? My third daughter asked instead. I just nodded and patted her red hair. I should get Jennifer her own warrant of trade sometime soon. Jennifer with a G nobles would love her. When in port, everyone must wear the Blackstone tags and a Lancefire sigil. Spread the word, I demanded as my bodyguard arrived at a sprint. Lord Lancefire, don't run off like that. He admonished me in a stern voice. I patted his armored shoulder. You will be our Aina champion, Captain Khan. I suspect the little humans won't best you in a melee duel, right? The White Scars Blademaster frowned for a second, then nodded. Trade negotiations by duel? He asked to make sure. Nobles' houses did have plenty of vendettas and other similar methods. We'll figure it out as we go. These Votan leagues can mine black holes and scoop out stars, so direct conflict is not advised for now. We'll need to be diplomatic for once, I whispered as if I was confessing a big secret. Captain, I've sent the next coordinates to your implant. The Grand_Orion_Compact is a suitable candidate for a new planetary core, and are willing to pay us 500 years of minerals from their vaults. It seems their original Votan core was destroyed by orcs, some 600 years ago. They really want a new one. The Blade informed me as I teleported to the bridge, this time bringing the Blade Master with me. A league without a Votan? It should be quite safe as an ingress point. And make the Orion dwarves quite friendly afterwards. Plenty of minerals too. I wasn't sure how much minerals they were able to scoop in 500 years, but it should be quite a lot. The galactic core was far denser in stars and rich mineral planets than any other part of the galaxy. A month later, we arrived at the Orion Hold, and were received with a grand fleet of thousands of warships, plus many more mining barges and thonic stellar scoops. Captain Khan stepped out first, and announced himself as champion of the Lancefire League. Another Orion kin stepped out, decked in a suit of plate armor even more impressive than our champion's Terminator plate. "You be rather tall for a proper kindred, Champion Khan," the armored dwarf noted calmly. "We have lived in the Imperium for centuries," Champion yawned. "The smaller and weakest of us have already died." Captain Khan answered with a barbed tone. You'd be quite strong, I gather. Fought the new bugs too." The other champion allowed in a more peaceful tone. "We have fought Tyranids, yes. And orcs, and chaos and necrons. Pretty much anything that walks, and many who don't have legs at all. The rogue trader even fought the Dark Eldar, and burned their hold for good." My bodyguard spoke in a dignified voice. "Have you a Grimner to show us?" Another Orion dwarf intervened, holding up his own ancient staff. Librarian Valerian teleported next to our champion, and held out his own Grimner staff. "I am the Grimner of our kin, the one who communes with the ancient Fane. Valerian Lancefire be my name. Barrier Tech, I. A bit young to be a proper Grimner, but then you said you are a new league. Now, when do we see this Federation core you proposed as trade?" Their old Grimner asked in a suspicious voice. I stepped through the Tesseract and joined the party as well. "My name is Pef Lancefire, commonly known as a rogue trader noble in the Imperium. Rogue traders are also empowered by the Emperor of Mankind to trade with other polities and even xeno-species, if the Imperium benefits from this. Remember that, when you trade with my kind," I explained in a polite voice. The Orion delegation measured me, and found me much smaller than my Primaris Astartes escorts. Almost like I was a dwarf among giants, so to speak. You'd be the squat among your kin, eh?" Their dangerous champion addressed me with some amusement. "I am still growing." I countered a bit annoyed, but the Orions only laughed and cheered at my plight. I was still growing. Really?